This is Hannibal back here for part 18 of my draft book. I'm just plowing through this draft book and I'm taking a break from my going all the famous wrestlers I've worked with. I've done did one of all the WWE Hall of Famers I've worked with, which went on for a long time, so I had to extend it into a part 17, which was more WWE Hall of Famers I worked with, as well as other superstars. And there's going to be a whole other one of other famous wrestlers I've worked with. I didn't even realize how many famous wrestlers I've worked with. I'll just make one follow up on part 17. I talked about the match with Scorpio, where not only did I receive a horrible concussion, and Jenny Santana was managing him there, but I actually tore my chest in that match. And I'll just say something about this chest tear. It was a horrible injury. The concussion was really bad too. But this happened at the end of October. I wrestled again in December because I was booked for it without having surgery. I had a stem cell injection in between and ended up getting another stem cell injection the following year. But here's the funny thing, between stem cells and physio, by the time our Canadian medical system needed me to do surgery, which was the following June because of how slow it is healed itself. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And I could do a whole book on the security jobs I've done because I've done so many over the years. I even done WWE security. You can see me there with Roman Reigns. I've done security for Taylor Swift, Britney Spears, Avril Lavigne, Metallica, Black Sabbath, Kanye West. I seriously, there's more people I haven't done security for than I have. With all the year, I did it from about 2001 to 2018. Um, Lots of crazy things happen. I put one story I told in another podcast in a description, but I'll just go over my worst injury in security, which was one of my last jobs. And I'm not really going to tell any details on this, any specific details, because it was a bad situation. Basically, I ended up pretty much getting stabbed in the face, which was a horrible, brutal injury involving weapons, of course, more than one people involved, but that was you can see the flap on my head. I'm very lucky I survived this. I'd never been knocked out or knocked down in any bar fights. And if I had been knocked out or knocked down in this, I would have definitely died because if I hadn't been able to keep my wits about me and remain calm and put pressure on this cut, I definitely would have bled to death. So it was a horrible, horrible, horrible injury. This is after they started working on me. So you can imagine how bad it was prior. And I ended up having to get plastic surgery. Here's a picture of me about 3 months later. You can see how bad the bump was. I ended up having to get plastic surgery done on my face to remove that horrible bump from from that incident, which was by far one of the things that led me to quit bouncing. There was a couple other. There's a ton of other incidents. I remember one incident. I mentioned a bar called Sin, where we went after all the wrestlers went, or a lot of them after the big Great North Wrestling event. I also got the TNA wrestlers free alcohol there after the TNA event in Gatineau that I promoted. Which, by the way, the funny thing is, the guy that was recognized the most that night was Earl Hebner. He's recognized more than any of the TNA wrestlers. But here, I'll tell you the story of how I quit that place. There was a big gang fight, an Asian gang and another gang towards the end of my stay there, and bottles just start getting thrown, and I'm about to throw somebody out, or I have one of the culprits, and one of these members of this other gang just comes and smashes a bottle right on his face as I'm holding them. And I knew the police were outside. I run outside, grab one of the officers, practically pull him back in, and say, "Hey, this guy just smashed a bottle on this guy, who, by the way, is covered in blood by this point." I'm like, "He almost hit me with it." And I point directly at the guy, and the manager at the place, who was clearly either friends with the guy or afraid. And this, again, this is a sin. This isn't the injury that I had. This is a different one. The manager said, "No, Devin's wrong. He's mistaken. It didn't happen that way." And at that point, I just walked out of that bar and never came back. I've worked at tons of places. I remember working at a bar called Minglewoods, where during the Ottawa Senators 2007 playoff run against Tampa Bay, there was as many as 8 fights a night, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse there. There's definitely you were earning your money. I think I was making like $14 an hour, and your shifts weren't very long, and there would be altercations all the time. You'd be literally getting attacked. Um, I worked at a bar called Barrymore's, where there's all kinds of it was good overall. I really liked it, but one of the reasons why I ended up leaving it, and there ended up being a court situation over this where they had to pay for my um, clothes that they ripped off me while I was throwing this group of people out. Got attacked and all scratched up. Um, and the cops, someone called the cops, and the cops ended up charging this person. Um, but I left after that. It never usually when I leave, it's either because they're being run really bad, the management is not running these places well, or I just get fed up and decide that I'm going to go out in a memorable way, which I have in my share of places. One of the places I worked was a pretty dangerous place, and I remember one Halloween. I mean, this was definitely one of my best Halloweens ever because it was a strip club. But before I was working at the strip club that night, I was the only bouncer there that night. They were all away, and I knew it was going to be a crazy night and a dangerous night. But I was working like a wine show before that, a wine and liquor show. So I remember I made friends with like all the exhibitors, and as soon as I was going literally, there was like half an hour in between, and they were within walking distance of each other. And I had took the bus for a while. I was taking the bus to a bouncing job too, because parking downtown Ottawa, you got to pay for parking. That cuts out of your bouncer pay. But a couple of the times I did meet people I kicked out at the bus stops while waiting for the bus. And oh my God, that doesn't always turn out well. And especially during this time, I got fed up with cell phones for a while. So from like 2012 to 2021, I didn't even use a cell phone. So I was like bouncing, and then even going to taking the bus, and I would think back to how dangerous this was. I was like doing this and waiting for long periods of time, sometimes to catch the bus after crazy nights without even having a cell phone. Um, but anyways, yeah, I remember this one Halloween. It was a great Halloween. I think it was Halloween. Well, I won't say the year, but so I made friends with all the exhibitors that were exhibiting wine and liquor. As soon as I finished my shift doing the real security job, I went around and they all said I could have a free shot and sample. So I had like 30 samples, and then I went then I went to do the security job because, as I said, this was a fairly dangerous place, and I was actually a little intimidated to be there with no backup. It ended up that night ended up going without much of an issue. It was actually a lot of fun. Imagine that, being the only bouncer at a strip club on Halloween and being going in there completely plastered from the previous security job. The only crazy thing that happened at one point during the night that night, someone ran in with a chainsaw that didn't actually have a chain on it, but we didn't know that at the time. That was a little shocking. Then I think that same New Year, I was at that same strip club, and one thing I'll say interesting that happened at that club was right as like the new year was being rung in, and again, I was alone there. Nobody wanted to work New Year's but me. And like just after the New Year's got rung in, a large fight broke out with two groups of people, and like it was just me working. And luckily, a bunch of the regulars jumped in and helped me. It was friggin' crazy. And a lot of these people ended up getting thrown down the stairs. The police ended up coming. It was just nuts, but we still talk about that to this day when I've run into some of the people, like, what a way to rig it a New Year's than with a bar fight that's, like, straight out of a movie, but I remember how scary it was at first when I didn't know if anyone from the club was gonna back me up. That was just a absolutely crazy night. Um, I've done security for, like, people like the Monkees. I've done security for kids singers, um, rappers. One of the funnest security jobs was for the weekend when they came to Ottawa. Somehow they allowed weed to be smoked in the building that night, and it was like one giant hot box, and there was like a UFO thing on top of the stage, and I just remember, like, that was one of the most fun times to do security, but, like, bouncing is always gonna end badly. It's always gonna end badly. I'm lucky I survived some of the incidents I was involved with. I mentioned, I think in previous chapters, I did it in Alberta too, and in Alberta, it's drinking is regulated differently than in Ontario, and you could have, again, two of the scariest nights were 25-cent draft nights and dollar paralyzer nights. You knew it was gonna be craziness on those nights. Um, but in Alberta, people tipped you a lot more at the door, so you made a lot more money. I worked at a bar called Cowboys there for a bit. I've worked at a million bars here in Ottawa. I think that there is gun activity here. Definitely here and there, there's gun people have been shot in this town at bars and stuff. More knife activity, but the the reputation Canada has is I mean, we do have a reputation that we like to fight in some places like Alberta. Uh, there are a good amount of fights every single night if you're working at certain bars in Alberta. Ottawa here, it depends what bars, but I don't think we have a lot of Americans that that watch this channel, and like Canadians are not as tame as you might think. Stuff happens here all the time. I mean, I mentioned earlier there's a big stabbing at my school. When I went to high school, there was just this week there was a stabbing at another school here in Ottawa. So it's not as safe as everybody thinks. Thanks, Dave, for loving my show. Yeah, bouncers, you do definitely you can get girls. I was with my ex-wife for like 13 years. So yeah, before I met her, I may have made use of the bouncing more, but once I was with her, um, I was faithful other than pretty much the thing that screwed us up and a couple other things that I was honest with her about, and they were all mistakes. But yeah, bouncing overall, there's perks to it. But if you're actually gonna get involved in situations and actually do your job, dangerous situations are bound to come up. And sadly, it's not a job that you wanna work at into your 40s. I'm glad I was able to stop doing it in 2017. Oh, I'll tell you one more scary story that happened. As I said, I could write a whole book on crazy stuff. But there was one guy. I mean, there's stuff I really don't wanna talk about of bad stuff that's happened. But there was one guy at this one place that was really belligerent. I had asked him to leave a couple times, and he's pushing me and poking me on top of like, I'm standing at the stairs at the entrance, and I'm the only bouncer on this night again, which often I was at bars because of my size and experience, and I believe it or not, my best you wouldn't have lasted with 0 assault charges as long as I was in bouncing and security if you weren't able to calm things verbally, and I was an amateur wrestler, so I more times than not, pretty much every time I was able to control this, unless it's an absolute emergency situation, you have to resort to striking. But yeah, there's this guy punching and poking me at the top of the stairs. At one point, after this had gone on for about 10 minutes, I just had a natural reaction of pushing him, and he ended up going flying backwards down the stairs, and, like, sadly, he was out of it, and I tried to, like, get consciousness out of it. I didn't know if he was out of it from the alcohol or the fall. I ended up picking him up, carrying him outside, and sitting him down outside, and at this point, I'm, like, petrified that something's happened to him. Again, this is a pure accident. It was just a natural reaction of someone who had been pushing me for a long period of time. I end up getting the manager and saying, "Hey, we're gonna have to call either an ambulance and the police." I mean, they had video cameras there, so I was confident that it would have been a self-defense situation, but I was very scared at this point, and the manager comes out. We both go outside, try and see what's going on with the guy, and this is by this time, it's like 5 minutes later, and there's a group of people all looking at him, and he just, like, bounces up from being knocked out. It was like he didn't remember anything that had happened. He's like, I gotta go back to my hotel, gotta go back to my hotel." And we just opened a cab door that was right in front, got him in the cab, and he went off to his hotel. But that was one of the scariest moments. But overall, we were able to handle stuff peacefully. Definitely a lot of tense situations I've been involved with. And as good as people say jujitsu is, I wouldn't I some arm locks are good for bouncing and stuff, but in amateur wrestling, I would say is still the best thing for bouncing. You don't wanna be fighting from your back in street fights. You don't wanna be down on your ground in street fights rolling around because more often than not, people are gonna have their friends. That's the most dangerous thing about street fighting, the people that are gonna interfere. So I would honestly say boxing, kickboxing, anything where you can control people without going to the ground is good for those situations, and avoiding those situations are the best because no good can come out of it. Injuries are gonna happen, potential legal situations are gonna happen. Uh, it's not a fun job overall. I did like my, concert security more than bouncing overall. But even there, you run into so much craziness. And when you're going out into like a mosh pit, when there's like, let's say 15, 20,000 people in the crowd at, let's say like an event like Blues Fest, Ottawa Blues Fest, that's outdoors. And let's just say it's a rap or country concert where the crowd is getting really rowdy. I mean, you could easily be stabbed and no one's going to know who did it. Very, very dangerous. Grandma Daisy just finished watching El Gigante and Big Josh team up in a WCW match. There you go, Matt Bourne, Giant Gonzalez. So there you go, guys. I will say one of my greatest things as a fighter is I'm tough. I'm able to absorb punishment. I don't think I'm the greatest fighter. Clearly, I showed in this. I've I've got I've got attacked most of the times that I've been beat. Most of the times I haven't won, there's been weapons involved. But the best situation is to avoid uh, jobs like that. The most I ever made as bouncer was like $125 a night, which is not worth the hell that I went through doing those jobs.